Hey everyone, you know the neighborhoods where we live are so influential on us. Each place has its own character and culture, but there are some places in the world that are so extraordinary, we have to do a video on it. So here are the top 15 most unique neighborhoods in the world. Starting with number 15, Matmata in Tunisia. Matmata is a small Berber village in southern Tunisia, and it's one of the most unique places in North Africa. It's known for its landscapes, but mostly its underground homes that have been dug into the earth to escape the desert climate. Known as troglodyte houses, they are essentially craters in the ground with rooms carved out of the surrounding rock and then connected by tunnels. Now, what's clever about this design is that they use the landscape to provide natural insulation, so it helps to keep the interiors cool during the summer heat and much warmer in the colder months. The practice of building homes like this is believed to date back many centuries, and possibly even as far back as the Roman times, though the exact origins are unclear. Around 2,000 people still continue to live there, and in recent decades, it's become famous on the world stage and has become somewhat of a tourist destination. This is thanks to it being used as a film set for the interior of Luke Skywalker's home in Star Wars Episode 4. But the community is also a fascinating one to meet as well. The Berber residents have a long history of storytelling, poetry, and music, which are central to their cultural identity, and they still live a very traditional way of life. Matmata's surroundings are pretty stunning too, with a backdrop of rocky hills and plains, which gives a great sense of the landscape of southern Tunisia. The influx of tourism, though, has had a mixed impact on the town. It has, of course, brought new economic opportunities, but it's also led to some commercialization of the area, and some traditional homes have been converted into hotels or tourist attractions, giving visitors a chance to stay in a troglodyte home and to experience life underground. But there are concerns that this could affect the authenticity and culture of the village. Number 14, Slab City, California. Slab City, it's often referred to as the last free place, is a rather surprising community that can be found in the Sonoran Desert of southeastern California. Located near the Salton Sea, it's a remote settlement that's home to a wide range of different people, including artists, drifters, retirees, and those looking for an alternative. Its name comes from the concrete slabs that are still there from a former U.S. Marine Corps base, Camp Dunlap, which was abandoned after World War II. Over time, the slabs became the foundation for a self-governed community that continues to draw visitors and residents. Now, what's unusual here is that there's no official governance, utilities, or infrastructure. There aren't any paved roads, running water, or electricity, with residents relying on solar panels, generators, and hauled-in water to meet their needs. This freedom from regulations and taxes has made it a popular place for people wanting a life outside the rules of living in a society. But this freedom comes with its own set of challenges, including extreme summer heat, limited resources, and lack of law enforcement, which means residents have to police themselves. But at the center of Slab City's artistic and cultural vibe is Salvation Mountain, which is a massive, colorful installation that was created by Leonard Knight. Made from adobe, straw, and thousands of gallons of brightly painted latex, it has the message that God is love. Well, work on the mountain began in the 1980s with the idea of using art to share spiritual beliefs, and it's now a designated folk art site. Next to it is East Jesus, which is a continually evolving outdoor art installation. Now, unlike most galleries you might go to, East Jesus is an open-air space where artists use salvaged materials to create sculptures and displays. It shows the resourcefulness of the residents there who repurposed discarded items into a functional creation. Life in Slab City is unlike anything else you'll find in the U.S. Residents are known as slabbers. They come from various walks of life, but they share a common desire for freedom and simplicity. Some in RVs, trailers, or makeshift shelters throughout the year, while others are in seasonal residents who often move there during the winter to avoid the cold of the northern states. Well, despite their often wildly different backgrounds, slabbers are known for working together to support one another, sharing resources, hosting communal events, and taking care of their surroundings. Number 13, Heetoorn, the Netherlands. Heetoorn is a beautiful village in the Netherlands, which has the nickname the Dutch Venice because of its network of canals that run through it. Founded in the 13th century by a group of fugitive Mediterranean settlers, it was originally built on marshy land. The settlers discovered large quantities of peat in the area, and over time they dug it out to use it as fuel. Over time, this waterlogged land led to the development of this unique neighborhood where residents adapted to living with and on the water. In all, there's over 56 miles of canals that wind through the village. Traditional punters, which are small flat-bottomed boats that are pushed along by a pole or use silent electric motors, glide silently over the water, giving a much more peaceful alternative to motorized vehicles. You can rent these boats to explore the canals, pass beneath the more than 170 wooden arch bridges, and take in the thatched roof cottages that line the banks. And with some of these dating back to the 18th century, it is a special community to be part of. To keep its charm and character, regulations are in place that preserve its traditional architecture and beauty, with modern buildings and structures being strictly controlled and designed to blend in with the environment. It's also part of a national park, which is a large wetland area that's home to a wide range of plant and animals, including otters, black terns, and rare plants like water soldiers. There are several museums here that you can visit, which display an amazing collection of minerals and gemstones that have been found locally. And it's probably one of the most peaceful and relaxing villages anywhere in the world. And it's no wonder residents there will do everything they can to preserve it like this for generations to come. Number 12. Damanhur, Italy. Damanhur is a self-sustaining community in the Alpine foothills of northern Italy, and it's one of the world's most unconventional spiritual centers. It was founded in 1975, and the idea was that it would become an intentional community with strong values of spirituality, creativity, and sustainability. Found in the Piedmont region near the town of Vidraco, it's most famous for its underground temples of humankind, which are said by locals to be the eighth wonder of the world. The founder had a vision of creating a society based on the ideas of harmony, spiritual growth, and environmental responsibility. And over the years, this concept has grown into a community of several hundred people known as Damanhurians, who live in nucleos or small settlements that are spread across the valley. These residents commit to a way of life where they share resources, live together, and have a close connection to nature. The Temples of Humankind is a huge underground complex that was carved into the mountain by hand. Work on the temples began secretly in the late 1970s, and they continued for over a decade before their existence became public knowledge. These chambers represent different spiritual themes, such as the Hall of the Earth, Hall of Water, and Hall of Mirrors, each of which was designed to convey universal principles and human potential. The artwork and architecture here draw from countless influences, including Egyptian, Celtic, and Eastern spiritual traditions, and they're aligned with celestial patterns that were made with huge attention to detail, showing the community's belief in the unity of art, spirituality, and science. Decisions here are made collectively, and the community encourages active participation in various aspects of daily life, from agriculture and education to renewable energy projects and art. Central to their belief system is the concept of reincarnation and the idea that individuals contribute to the collective evolution of humanity. Today, this place welcomes thousands of guests each year who go on to experience its unique culture and to explore the temples of humankind, with the hope that you will learn from them and take some of the ideas back with you wherever you live. Number 11. Nagoro, Japan. Nagoro is a tiny village in the remote Iya Valley on Shikoku Island in Japan, and it truly is a place that's like no other. It's known as the Valley of the Dolls. It's become famous in recent years for its residents, not the human ones, but the life-size dolls that are there, and now they far outnumber the living population. Yeah, it's a quirky place, and one that shows the demographic challenges that are being faced by rural Japan, where younger generations are often moving to urban areas for work and leaving communities like this to dwindle elsewhere. At its peak, Nagoro was once home to hundreds of people who worked in the forestry and agriculture industries. It experienced a population decline starting in the mid-20th century, however, and today, fewer than 30 people live in this town, with many of them being elderly, which has left the village facing the reality of possibly disappearing altogether. A former resident, Tsukimi Ayano, returned to her hometown in the early 2000s to care for her father, and upset by seeing the empty houses and abandoned streets, she began to create life-size dolls as a tribute to everyone that had left. Her first doll was modeled after her father and placed in the family's fields, and soon more followed. Now, there are over 350 dolls throughout Nagoro. Each one has been made by Ayano using fabric, straw, and old clothing. They're positioned in lifelike scenes throughout the village, sitting at bus stops, working in the fields, or fishing along the river, and they create a strange atmosphere as you walk around. The most unnerving sight of all is the abandoned school, which now has been repopulated with dolls that represent former students and teachers. In the classroom, these figures sit silently at the desks, and they're the most powerful reminder of the community that once existed there, and the changes caused by urbanization and demographic changes. Quite what the future holds for this place is unclear, with an aging population and limited resources, but in her own way, Ayano has ensured that this neighborhood will live on in a way that the dolls will make sure that Nagoro's story will never be forgotten. Number 10. Ganvier, Benin. Ganvier, sometimes referred to as the Venice of Africa, is a stilt village that's on Lake Nokoué in southern Benin. With an intricate network of waterways, homes built on stilts, and incredible floating markets, Ganvier is home to around 20,000 people, meaning it's one of the largest lake villages in the world, and it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It dates back to the 16th and 17th centuries when the Tofinu people who founded the village sought refuge from the Fon warriors of the Dahomey Kingdom. The name Ganvier actually means "we survived" in the Tofinu language, as a reminder of the village's origins and its people. The homes here, schools, churches, and even restaurants are built on wooden stilts rising above the water. Narrow wooden canoes are the main mode of transportation, gliding between houses and along the village's waterways. Life here revolves around the lake, with fishing being the main form of income, and the Tofino have developed their own unique fishing technique called akadja, where the underwater fences made from branches create an artificial habitat to attract and then trap the fish. Their floating market is a particular highlight of village life, and for visitors too. Women in colorful traditional attire paddle their canoes filled with goods like fresh fish, fruits, vegetables, and handcrafted items. This marketplace sustains their local economy, and it's also a social hub where residents exchange news and connect with one another. Voodoo here plays a major role in their spiritual life, with ceremony and sacred sites dedicated to honoring their gods and ancestors. Festivals can often combine traditional rituals with communal celebrations, offering a glimpse into their rich cultural heritage. The town does, though, face increasing challenges in modern times. Environmental change like pollution threaten the delicate ecosystem of the lake, and the people's reliance on the lake for water, food, and transportation makes that issue particularly problematic. Efforts are now being made to promote a sustainable tourism industry as a way to generate income while preserving the village's culture. Number 9. Manshiat Nasser, Cairo, Egypt. Cairo is, of course, one of the most historically important and well-known cities in the world, but with most of the focus being on the ancient ruins that are there, there's much more to this place that's often overlooked. Manshiat Nasser, for example, is a unique neighborhood that's on the outskirts of Cairo, and it's a place that's often referred to as Garbage City. It's known for having an unusual role in Cairo's waste management system, and it's home to Zabaleen, who are a community of informal garbage collectors who have turned waste recycling into a highly organized and efficient industry. Manshiat Nasser began as a trash collecting center in the mid-20th century when rural migrants from Upper Egypt began settling in the area. These migrants, many of whom were Coptic Christians, took up the job of waste collection in Cairo, which was a task very few others wanted to do. Over time, they developed a sophisticated system that now processes an estimated 80 to 90% of Cairo's waste, which is a figure that's far higher than most official waste management systems around the world. The streets here are, as a result, lined with piles of sorted and unsorted garbage, which has given the area its informal name. Beneath the surface of what seems like a messy place, though, is an intricate ecosystem of recycling and resource recovery. The community has developed some unique approaches to waste management. For example, women here have played a role in repurposing material into handicrafts, such as rugs and bags, which are sold locally and internationally. Several initiatives, including partnerships with international organizations, have introduced technology to improve recycling methods, like converting organic waste into biogas for cooking and electricity. Even though it's got a hugely important place in Cairo's sustainability, there are difficulties here. The Zabaleen don't have any formal legal recognition, which makes them vulnerable to policy changes and economic fluctuations. So, for example, the government's introduction of foreign waste management companies in the early 2000s disrupted their operations and led to reduced income for many families. This area also struggles with poor infrastructure, limited access to education and healthcare, and widespread poverty too. The neighborhood, though, continues to thrive, finding new ways to support an industry that's given Cairo one of the most sustainable garbage processing systems on the planet. Number 8. Whittier, Alaska. Whittier in Alaska is a small town that can be found near the waters of Prince William Sound. With its incredible scenery, unique living setup, and interesting history, its 300 residents experience nature, community, and isolation in a truly unique way. The town began life during World War II, when the U.S. military looked to develop a strategically protected port in Alaska. Whittier's location, with it being surrounded by steep mountains and being accessible only by sea or a single land route, made it an ideal spot. This led to the construction of the Anton Anderson Memorial Tunnel, a 2.5-mile-long passage through Maynard Mountain, which remains the only land connection to the town. But during its military days, the town was busy with facilities designed to house thousands of troops. And after the military's departure in the 1960s, it transitioned into a civilian town, but reminders of its past remain in its architecture and in its layout. The thing that's most unusual here about Whittier is that most of the town's residents live in a single building called Begich Towers, which is a 14-story former military barracks that was built in the 1950s. This arrangement, where homes, offices, a school, a post office, grocery store, and even a church are located under one roof, has created a close-knit sense of community. While it may seem cramped, this design is clever for Whittier's extreme weather conditions, which include heavy snows, frequent rain, and powerful wind. With almost everything being in this one building, it means that residents can reduce their exposure to the elements, especially during the long, harsh winters. It's common to go days, weeks, even months without going outdoors there. The town receives over 200 inches, or about 500 centimeters of rain, and more than 20 feet, or 6 meters of snow each year, making it one of the wettest places in the U.S. This weather has given the town a reputation for being perpetually covered in mist, but on those days when it's clear, the natural beauty of the surrounding area is just stunning. Moving on to number 7, Yanjing in China. Yanqing is a small but historically important town that's in the Yunnan province in China, and it's best known for its unique geographical position. That's because it was built in an incredibly narrow valley with the Nanxi River cutting right through the center of it. Its unusual layout had led to it being given the nickname of the narrowest town in the world, as it's squeezed between two steep cliffs with buildings precariously lining the riverbanks. In some parts, the width of the entire town is less than 100 feet or 30 meters, making it quite the sight. There is a reason for the size and location, though, as Yanjing has a long history dating back hundreds of years as an important stop-off along ancient trade routes. The town was also an important one for health in the region, with the surrounding mountains being full of medicinal herbs that have been used for centuries in traditional Chinese medicine. But the town's geography, of course, played a massive role in the development of the town, as the steep mountains that surround it have limited expansion opportunities, and they forced buildings to be built vertically instead of horizontally. Some homes are built directly onto the cliffside with their foundations carved into the rock, and this architectural adaptation has created an unusual community where there are colorful buildings stacked on top of one another in a seemingly gravity-defying way. Today, Yanjing is home to a mix of groups, including the Han, Yi, and Mao peoples, each who contribute to the town's rich traditions and customs. Local festivals, traditional music, and crafts create a vibrant community here. Tourism is relatively limited compared to other parts of Yunnan province though, because the inability to expand the town to accommodate visitors, but those who do go there will be treated to incredible views, warm hospitality, and a glimpse into an authentic side of China. Number 6. Busingen am Hochrhein, Germany. So most communities in the world live in a place that's in one country and are citizens of that country, but there are few exceptions to this. Busingen-Hochrhein is a particularly unique neighborhood that's in a German town that's an enclave that's entirely surrounded by Switzerland. It's located along the Rhine River in the Baden-Württemberg region. Busingen is an anomaly in European geography, and it finds itself at an intersection of German and Swiss identities, laws, and economies. This unusual situation dates back to 1693, when it became part of the Kingdom of Württemberg, and over the years, as borders shifted, the surrounding territories were integrated into Switzerland, and it left Busingen as a German outpost that was surrounded by Swiss land. Despite attempts to incorporate it into Switzerland, including a referendum in 1919 where residents overwhelmingly voted to be annexed, the town remained under German control because of the political and historical complexities. Well, the arrangement means that this place is subject to German law, but in reality functions as part of Switzerland. For example, while the town is part of Germany's state of Baden-Württemberg, it's also part of Switzerland's customs area. The Swiss franc is the primary currency that's used there, although the euro is also accepted, and the Swiss Postal Service operates alongside Germany's, with the town having both German and Swiss postal codes. Many residents work in Switzerland and benefit from its stronger economy and higher wages, and the town's place in Switzerland's customs zone means that goods and services follow Swiss regulations, making cross-border interactions a bit easier. Schools here educate children in both German and Swiss curriculums, local governance works closely with the Swiss authorities, and even sports teams often play in Swiss leagues. The town has a population of just over 1,400 people, many of whom describe themselves as both German and Swiss. The annual Rheinfall Festival, for example, which is held in collaboration with nearby Swiss towns, is one example of this cross-border community spirit that's so central to life here in Busingen. It is a fascinating place to visit, not just because it's like stepping into an example of a European cooperation zone, but because of its incredible landscape too. It's set on the banks of the Rhine River. This town is surrounded by stunning natural beauty, including forests, rolling hills, and the amazing Rheinfall, which is Europe's largest waterfall. Number 5. Coober Pedy, Australia. Coober Pedy, it's a small town in South Australia that's surely one of the most unusual communities in the world. It's also known as the opal capital of the world. It is famous for its opal mining industry and underground lifestyle. The town's name comes from the Aboriginal term Kupapiti, which translates to mean a man in a hole, because of the area's history as a mining settlement. Opals were first discovered there in 1915 by a teenager, and he sparked a rush of miners who then moved there to extract these precious gemstones for themselves. Coober Pedy is also now the world's largest source of opals and produces high-quality stones that are sought after in jewelry markets around the world. But it wasn't simply a case of going there and just finding the opals laying on the surface, though. The people who moved to the region soon realized that they would need to develop a new way of living to survive the environment. The desert climate here, with the summer temperatures regularly rising to more than 104 degrees Fahrenheit or over 40 degrees Celsius, mean that they began to live underground. The town's population, which is made up of around 2,000 people, primarily live in dugouts, which are homes that have been carved into the soft sandstone. These subterranean structures provide natural insulation, keeping the interiors cool in the summer and warm in the winter. But beyond just homes, Coober Pedy has underground churches, shops, museums, and even a bar. The Serbian Orthodox Church, which was carved entirely into the rock, is an amazing example of the artistry that can be seen there. Mining remains crucial to Coober Pedy's economy. Visitors can explore the sites through guided tours, learning about the process of extracting opals and the equipment that's used, from basic hand tools to more advanced machinery, and some mines allow tourists to try their hand at noodling or sifting through discarded rock piles in search of opals. Nearby attractions include the Painted Desert, which is multicolored rock formations, and the Breakaways, which is a collection of mesas and hills that have featured in several films. Number 4. Neft Dashlari, Azerbaijan. Neft Dashlari, which translates to mean oil rocks, is an unusual settlement and an industrial site in the Caspian Sea, which is about 60 miles to the southeast of Baku, which is the capital city of Azerbaijan. It's built entirely on steel platforms and concrete trestles. It was constructed during the Soviet era as the world's first offshore oil platform, and it remains the center of Azerbaijan's oil industry. Plans began in the late 1940s, when geologists discovered substantial oil reserves beneath the Caspian Sea. In 1949, the Soviet Union began the project of building an offshore platform, but at the time this would push the limits of engineering, design, and technology. The first well was drilled that year, and Neft Dashlari soon began to develop. The settlement expanded quickly, with residential buildings, drilling rigs, and infrastructure being constructed on top of platforms. By the 1950s, it had become a fully functioning city on stilts. At its peak in the 1960s and 70s, it had more than 5,000 workers and had a wide range of features. The settlement had apartment blocks, a bakery, a cinema, a library, and even a park with trees and gardens that were planted in soil that had been brought from the mainland. With so much expansion and development, the town now looks like a labyrinth of rusting platforms, cranes, and pipelines that rise out of the sea, surrounded by an expanse of water. The residential areas now lie mostly abandoned, giving parts of it an eerie, ghost town-like atmosphere, but many workers still commute from the mainland to tend to active oil wells. Its location and foundation of sunken ships meant that the corrosive effects of salt water had also posed some serious issues for maintenance and repairs, and there was always the chance of a structural collapse without much warning. In recent years, discussions about the future of the town have raised some questions about its sustainability and its historic importance, with many arguing that parts of the settlement should be preserved as a historical and cultural site. Number 3. Marloth Park, South Africa. Marloth Park is a wildlife sanctuary and holiday town in South Africa's Mpumalanga province, which offers a rare opportunity for people to live right in the middle of nature. Found on the southern border of the Kruger National Park, Marloth Park is a conservation site where humans and wildlife live in an environment without the constraints that you'll find in traditional game reserves. First developed in the 1970s as a private residential and holiday area, the park was designed to preserve its environment while providing a unique lifestyle for its residents. It covers a site of around 7,500 acres of bushveld, and it's home to a wide range of wildlife, including giraffes, zebras, impalas, warthogs, and kudu, which roam freely among the houses and chalets. The biggest difference about this park, when compared to other towns and reserves, is its integration with the environment. There are no fences to separate the properties from the bush, meaning that wildlife can wander through residential areas whenever they want. But it also requires a great deal of responsibility and respect for nature, as the animals are wild and their safety and well-being are paramount. The Crocodile River forms the northern boundary of the park, creating a natural divide between the sanctuary and the Kruger National Park. From lookout points along the river, visitors can often see elephants, lions, hippos, and crocs on the other side, making it a perfect location for game viewing without the need for a safari vehicle. But Marloth Park is, first and foremost, a sanctuary for animals, but it's also one for humans wanting a break from urban life. The area's setting, with acacia trees, grasslands, and thorny scrub, offers a sense of calm and a connection to nature. The town has no streetlights, meaning there's stunning views of the night sky too, and you can stay in a range of places, from bush lodges to luxury villas. As you'd expect, most of the locals are passionate about conservation, and they work to protect the delicate balance between humans and wildlife. It's a tricky setup that can't be replicated everywhere though, as the human and wildlife interactions have to be carefully managed to prevent harm to anyone. Feeding wildlife, for example, is discouraged, as it can lead to dependency and alter natural behaviors. And it's now a semi-arid region. This experiences droughts and water scarcity, meaning that it's now focusing more on sustainable practices for its preservation. Number 2. Santa Cruz del Islote, Colombia. Of all the island communities around the world, Santa Cruz del Islote is surely the most unique. It's located off the coast of Colombia in the Caribbean Sea. It's one of the most densely populated islands in the world. As part of the San Bernardo archipelago, it's no larger than a soccer field, but it's home to around 500 people. According to local stories, the island was first lived on around 150 years ago by fishermen from the mainland who needed a safe place to rest and process their catches. Over time, these temporary settlements evolved into a permanent community as families joined the fishermen. With its limited size of roughly 3 acres, the island has no room for roads or vehicles. The houses, which are painted in bright colors, are tightly packed, leaving only narrow pathways to move between them. The majority of people who live there are fishermen still, and their livelihoods depend on the surrounding waters. Fish, lobster, and conch are among the main catches, providing food and income for the islanders. It's far from being self-sufficient, however, particularly because the island has no natural sources of fresh water, so drinking water is delivered by boat from the mainland. Electricity is provided through solar panels and the occasional use of generators, and many homes use rainwater collection systems to add to their water supplies. Tourism, too, has also, in recent times, become an increasingly important part of their local economy. Visitors come to the island to experience that unique charm and for the opportunity to see a way of being that's so different from their own. Even with its small size, Santa Cruz del Islote has a great cultural tradition. Music, dances, and celebrations are central to their identity, and festivals bring people together for large events throughout the year. But rising sea levels, coastal erosion, they threaten the island's future, and there's also potential issues with the impact of waste and overfishing. Without a thriving ecosystem in the water, there won't be anything to catch and sell, so there are efforts to address those issues, such as partnerships with NGOs and government initiatives to promote sustainable practices, protect marine habitats, and improve their living conditions. Number 1. Auroville, India. Auroville, which is in the southern state of Tamil Nadu in India, is an experimental township and one of the most interesting social experiments in the world. It was founded in 1968 by Mira Alfassa, who is known in the town as the Mother and was a French spiritual leader and collaborator of Indian philosopher Sri Aurobindo. Auroville was planned to be a place where people from all over the world could live in harmony and leave behind the traditional national, religious, and cultural boundaries. The name Auroville translates to mean the City of Dawn, and the idea that it would be a universal city that doesn't belong to any individual nation, but to humanity as a whole. The Mother described it as a place for an actual experiment in collective living, where people could work towards human unity and self-realization. The township was made official on February 28, 1968, when representatives from 124 countries came together to pour soil from their homelands into an urn to symbolize the collective aspirations of humanity. Now, Auroville covers an area of around 5,000 acres, and it's designed around a central point, which is a golden spherical meditation center that's the spiritual heart of the community. Currently, the population is made up of over 3,000 residents from more than 60 countries, and the community is organized into zones that reflect different aspects of life, including the residential zone, the industrial zone, cultural zone, and green belt. The green belt, for example, is a place that's dedicated to environmental regeneration, and once a barren, empty landscape, it's now been transformed into a thriving forest and agricultural area. Auroville operates on principles that go against what most people are used to elsewhere. It's got no politics or official religion, no governance, and no private property. Instead, decisions are made collectively through discussions and consensus, with residents working in various fields including education, agriculture, renewable energy, arts, and research, all of which contribute to the self-sufficiency of the community. Money is avoided as much as possible, with residents receiving a monthly maintenance allowance, and services like food, healthcare, and education are subsidized or provided for free. Having set out with optimistic goals, Auroville has become a special place. There have, of course, been issues with balancing the vision of a utopian society with practical realities such as funding, governance, and integration with surrounding communities. But it has worked alongside the Indian government to be allowed to operate under a special legal framework, meaning it is, in virtually every way, a self-governed society that can follow its own path. Thanks for exploring with me, everybody. I'll see you next time. Thank you to our channel members.